You report on all the good number of things. You report about the disappearance of billions upon billions of dollars. A couple of billions end up in Lebanon, a couple of billions I don't know where, and so on and so forth. But there's one story, since we're from Al Jazeera, that got me going. You actually said at one point there was this hustler who was going to hustle the government, and the CIA apparently was open to the idea that he was going to decipher. And you go ahead, continue the story.
Yeah, it's just one of the, I think maybe the best story of the whole war on terror in terms of the dark humor that you can have from it. This is a guy named Dennis Montgomery, who is a computer software expert. He claimed that he had developed technology, special computer technology that would allow you to find hidden objects in videotape. He got to the CIA, or the CIA got to him, depending on who you talk to. They became convinced, or he convinced them, again, depending on who you talk to, that he could decipher secret numbers and letters hidden in the banner on Al Jazeera broadcasts.
The banner on Al Jazeera broadcast.
Right. And he says, as I say in the book, he says he was more or less agnostic about what this meant, but the CIA took it to mean this is secret Al-Qaeda codes. And he didn't disabuse him of that notion. And he was getting all of these tapes, and he kept sending these numbers and letters to the CIA. And miraculously, many of them corresponded to international flights. And these international flights, the CIA became convinced, were the new targets of Al-Qaeda. And Dennis Montgomery became, and his technology became, the super secret source for the CIA on Al-Qaeda for several months in 2000. At Christmas 2003, they took this information they were getting from him so seriously that they went to the President, Bush, and convinced him that he had to ground flights all over the world, international air flights to the United States, because they were the next targets of Al-Qaeda, based on Montgomery's information saying that these numbers and letters were hidden inside the banner on Al Jazeera broadcast.
You're an investigative journalist. Your job has been, to a large degree, to reveal the truth about misuse of power. I think these stories are certainly valued.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, that's why I think it's so important to get the American people to understand that, and to look at that issue, the issues of abuse of power, and to realize that when the government cracks down on whistleblowers and targets reporters, that what they really are doing is they're trying to stop from being embarrassed, stop from politically damaging things coming out. And it's not really about national security. The government constantly says these stories hurt national security, or they're trying to punish people or stop stories for national security reasons, and it's really mostly about political damage to their own careers.
Well, certainly more damage has been done by secrecy than by revealing secrets.
There's no evidence. I can't think of a single story by anybody on print or broadcast or anything since 9/11 that's in any way really hurt American national security.
But journalism, has it changed from the days of Morrow and Bradley, who just recently passed away? Is there something new now in terms of journalism, in terms of the relationship with power? Because Bradley used to hang out with Kennedy for dine and wine.
Right.
Today they play tennis together, they play golf together, even among your colleagues in the New York Times, with people in power.
I think that there was the traditional view of, Scotty Reston and Bradley and all those people hanging out with, people in power was certainly true. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, I think that changed, and there was more of a adversarial relationship developed. There's a growing sense in the Washington media, press corps. I mean, I have been saying for the last few months that I think Obama's record on press freedom is clear, and that he is one of the greatest enemies of press freedom in at least a generation. And I think it's become a general consensus among journalists that this administration is one of the most secretive in modern history.
But if I understand correctly, at one point you were subpoenaed, but then that was buried because it passed a year and so on and so forth.
Well, what happened was I got subpoenaed in 2008
right.
for my book, State of War. And then that subpoena there were a lot of legal procedures going on. At that point, I thought that they were going to, since Obama was now in, I thought they were going to drop the case. But instead, they renewed the subpoena in 2009 and then kept renewing it several times. And still coming after me, or they were recently. So,
do you think you should go to jail?
No, I'd rather not. But if I have to.
You think this is the rule of the law, or this is just ruling by laws?
I think that the government is using old laws like the Espionage Act in a way that I don't think they were meant to be used, to go after whistleblowers. I mean, the Espionage Act was supposed to go after spies, and instead they're going after whistleblowers. And the war on terror has transformed America in many ways, and people don't usually in their daily lives step back and realize how much America has changed in the last 13 years as a result of what we've done to ourselves.
And you got in trouble for trying to report on some of that, reveal some of that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, the government's been after me for quite a while for some of my reporting, and that's why I wrote this book. This Pay Any Price is my answer to the government for the way they've targeted me.
For your earlier book,
right,
and your reporting.
Yes. And I figure, the best way to respond to the government is to keep writing, keep investigating, and keep revealing abuses of power.
So they're making it as a zero-sum game between national security and your freedom to write.
Yeah, they always want to say that whatever you do, that hurt national security. We can't tell you how it hurt national security, but trust us, it hurt national security.
You said that the Obama administration launched a draconian crackdown on the press, spying on reporters while prosecuting more leakers and whistleblowers than all previous administrations combined.
Right. All you have to do is look at the record. They've prosecuted or attempted prosecutions of more whistleblowers than ever before, than all previous administrations have ever done. Bush and Cheney, kind of in an ad hoc way, with a lot of emergency measures and kind of in a half-panicked way. They kind of launched this big national security apparatus. Mm-hmm. Obama, I think, has made it bipartisan and normalized it. He has taken what they started in kind of a small ad hoc way, and he's made it a much larger, more permanent, normalized war on terror and national security state and counterterrorism apparatus. I think that's going to be one of his major legacies, is that he has made it far more difficult for any real political debate to happen on the war on terror because it's now bipartisan. Democrats no longer want to criticize the war on terror because then they'd be criticizing their own party. Republicans don't want to criticize it because then they'd be criticizing their own party. So all you have today in the established political sphere in Washington are libertarian Republicans like Rand Paul who criticize it, right, and very liberal Democrats.
People on the fringe.
People on the fringes of Congress. So apart from dropping the enhanced interrogation program and closing the secret prisons overseas, which Bush had already closed, there haven't been very many changes in the way Obama has prosecuted the war on terror from the way Bush did. Guantanamo is still open. He stayed in Iraq until the status forces agreement required us to leave, which had been negotiated under Bush. That's one of the things that people say, well, Obama cut and ran out of Iraq. These are the conservative critics of Obama, when in fact all he did was pull troops out on the date that Bush had negotiated.
Right.
And so he is not really much different from Bush on the war on terror.
But you say that with a bit of a cool nerves, which I appreciate. That's fine. But that's exactly what the decay of a society or of a state looks like, is when you don't have an accountability of people in power and you have a complicit press.
Right. Well, I have a chapter in my new book about kind of the capstone of all this. Is I document a number of very bizarre things that have happened in the war on terror and kind of abuses also, and I kind of cap it off by talking about they can do this because of this crackdown on whistleblowers. And I detail the case of Diane Rourke, who was really one of my heroes in all this. She was...
By the way, just for our viewers, I mean, it's kind of, you get goosebumps reading that bit when they get into her house in, I think, Portland?
Oregon. Rural Oregon, yeah.
Yeah, 6 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
Many FBI agents with white gloves going through her stuff, picking her stuff, putting her on a side, asking her strange questions.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, Diane Rourke was the House Intelligence Committee's staffer in charge of oversight of the National Security Agency at the time of 9/11. After 9/11, she was told by people at the NSA that the NSA was starting to do domestic spying on Americans. And she thought at first, this has to be a rogue operation. Nobody would have approved this. And so she goes to everybody she knows in the government to try and get this stopped. And to her horror, she eventually realizes all these people she's gone to already know about it, are part of it, are going along with it, and want her to shut up. And she eventually has a very dramatic showdown with the director of the NSA in his office and says, you know this is illegal and unconstitutional. And he just tells her with this final, very chilling line, he says, well, we'll have the majority of 9. Meaning, if it ever leaks, and if it ever, if there's ever a controversy over its legality, the Supreme Court will be with us. And she then, driving away from his office, she realizes, I've got to get to the Supreme Court before Hayden does. And she sends a note to William Rehnquist, then the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to try to warn him. And never hears back from him, and she retires depressed. But she never leaked to the press about it. She just retired. And after our stories ran in the New York Times a few years later, because she had raised questions inside the system, they immediately thought she was the prime suspect to be our source. And so they raided her house.
So one last question. Are we going to start a petition for your release from prison anytime soon?
I hope not. I hope I don't go to prison. So.
I hope not either.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.